Very few times in life are we actually jumping off a cliff. It's tiny little shifts that all add up.
Hey friends, welcome back to Currently the Conversation, brought to you by TVC Cherry Capital Airport, your Northern Michigan connection. I'm Christal Frost, and today's episode is for anyone who is successful on paper, but maybe feeling a little stuck or overwhelmed, or maybe like you've lost your footing internally. My guest is Shea Petaja, a strategic advisor, executive coach, and host of The Honest Edge. And what I love about Shea is her work lives at the intersection of strategy, leadership, and real life human behavior. So we're talking about clarity, intuition versus anxiety, and what it looks like to rebuild trust in yourself when life forces change. So let's get into it. Shea Petaja, thank you so much for being here.
It's great to be here.
It's so wonderful to have you here. We've known each other for a long time now.
A long time, because I was thinking of that on the way in. It's been 13 years since we met each other at WTCM in the hallway.
That is so true.
We would pass in the hall and I'd be like, hey, you were like the other young
I was the other
girl
one.
there trying to figure this whole thing out. Our early 30s.
Yes.
Yeah, so.
The early days.
The early days.
Those were the
days.
Yeah, so we actually met in radio, and your career has just blossomed. And what I love most about it, and I love that we're going to have some time to talk about it today, is that you have been the architect of that, right? You've just
word.
been like,
Yeah.
I'm going to make this happen. And it's really not just impressive, but inspiring.
Well, thank you. I think I've been recently thinking a lot about my ancestry. Where did I come from? You hear family stories and you accept them, and then they kind of live in your subconscious.
Yeah.
But, being raised by a Finnish family, living on the farm, taking a sauna every day. I mean, my grandfather left Detroit. I don't know if you know this. He left Detroit. He was working for GM. To build the dome for Dr. Saria.
Wow.
That's what brought us up north, because we're a hockey family. And so he kind of stuck it to the man. It's like, I'm going up to Traverse City. I'm buying this farm, 40-acre farm. I'm going to build this dome. And then he started Petaja Brothers Building with his brother Bert. So I think when I look back, that quiet rebellion lives within that Sisu spirit. So I've been trying to really realize it's not by accident this has happened, Shea. We're born into it.
Yeah.
About time you took ownership of it. So yeah.
Well, and when we think about the work that you do, if someone is meeting you for the first time, how would you describe what you do in like real person language, right?
Hey, who the heck is Shea? Why is she everywhere? Does she really buy her own billboards? Okay.
You do have some good billboards.
Well, I just love billboards.
They're great.
Work. I love billboards. When I can afford them, I buy them. We'll start a GoFundMe for Shea's billboard campaign. So I started many years ago in the ministry, transitioned over to sales, and then was approached by Prout Financial in my late 20s to come over there. And I said, look, I don't know how to do math.
Right.
Like, I'm not a math person. And he said, that's cool. I've got those people. I need a creative person who loves people, knows how to network, and has fresh ideas. And, was hired during the recession.
Right.
And so what a smart business move on his end to pick me. No. As you can see, I like to have fun. I'm not a serious... We do serious work, but we're going to have some fun. And that I thought I'd only be there 2 years.
Right.
And 15 years later, that blossomed. And along that, building that business, I became a coach, certified life coach.
Okay.
When I went full-time into that 3.5 years ago, I noticed a trend. And the trend was business owners were hiring me.
Yeah.
Business owners, entrepreneurs, or people who were going to become entrepreneurs. And people who had established businesses, new businesses, but definitely facing a growth phase where they're trying to figure out, look, I know what I want. You don't have to, business owners always know what they want.
Without a doubt.
They always know. Sometimes they want too many things. And so when they work with me, I'm an ideas person, but also it's kind of a slap station. Like, you have to focus here, because we got to make sure, one, you have a good idea. Like, is this idea going to work? What is your bandwidth and mindset around it? And then do you have the right people in the right seat? Because we all know business owners, they're a little crazy. We love them, but they're obviously a little bit nuts to go rogue on their own and do their own thing. And their employees are working hard to make their dream come alive. But you have to make sure you have the right people in the right seat in order to do that.
Right.
And so that's where my combination of coaching, love of people, and ideas kind of come together. As you said in your beautiful intro, that was a very nice
thank you.
introduction.
So, I'm always fascinated by that. And I share that. My husband is a business owner.
Yes.
And he's a little crazy.
Yes, I know him.
Yes, you do. He, it's a really interesting thing because I feel like I'm an ideas person. I'm someone who likes the idea of taking risks, but I've always been I have to know where this money is coming from, making sure we have, there's just something very, very practical about me. But I can tell you, I think one of the things that I love most about my husband is that he thinks about those things second. And that is, that is an entrepreneur, right?
Truly, yes, because it's the belief and the conviction that you have something that could work.
Yeah.
And they're usually right. And they have a high tolerance for risk or failure.
Yeah.
And you can't be too attached to failure.
Yeah.
You have to look at failure as another great lesson. Wow. Okay, that did not work.
Yeah.
How can I learn from this? Where can I go from there? And you just got to be able to bounce back up.
But also in that high level of confidence, I would say too, is someone who's going to say, I'm going to make this happen. Get the right team around me, put them in the right spots, hire Shea to make sure that I'm doing things, in the right order, sort of, so to speak. But that is the other, I think, really incredibly impressive thing about entrepreneurs is that they have that internal flame that is hard to extinguish.
It is. And they make ultimately terrible employees. When I first started working with my coach, it was just so funny. I said to him, he was an EOS coach, and I said, look, I just want to be a really good employee. And he said, okay. That's a cute idea, Shea.
Right.
And I think what made me a great employee is that I thought like an entrepreneur. So it was always better for me in any job I had to work alongside the founder because that's just how my brain works.
Yeah.
But that can also be very difficult as an employee because things maybe aren't necessarily always fair.
Right.
And so that is a hard line to walk. I remember I first job out of college in sales, Jim Egbert, he owns a bedroom company, and him and I would just get into it, kind of like a fun spar. It was it was more of a spar. And he said, Petaja, you're never gonna be happy till you have your own thing. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I like being a good employee.
Yeah.
And he was like, okay. And so there were hints of this all along. And what I've noticed in my own life is I've always been the great wingman to the founder or to the business owner. And so running my own business alongside them is a very healthy dynamic.
Yeah.
And it's very energy giving. And I love it. And I love the crazy brains of business owners.
Yeah. I love them. I was really struck by something that you've shared publicly, that when you were growing up, you were scared.
All the time.
You were scared of crowds.
I'm still scared. Is this going to work?
You were scared of standing out.
Yes.
You were scared of being seen.
Yes.
But that you had to actually learn bravery.
Totally.
What do you remember about that version of yourself?
I remember being a kid who loved being alone in my bedroom. Like I would get my bedroom clean and I would get my artwork out and I would draw and paint and I'd have my, Paula Abdul.
Yes.
Straight up playing. Straight up, now tell me. I'd have my music playing or I really had a big crush on this boy band at our church, the Wynn Brothers.
Oh.
And so the janitor, Jay to be, he would hand me the recordings of the Wynn Brothers. And I would play them, church music, and have my room clean. I'd be so happy in my little space. Alone. But then I was drawn to people all the time and had to engage. And then I had to pull back and kind of reorient. we didn't have a word for that, but now they call that an omnivert.
Yes.
An omnivert is a person who likes extreme extroversion and extreme introversion.
Okay.
An ambivert, we've heard that word too. An ambivert is someone who can kind of blend the two worlds and not need a break from either.
Okay.
When I look back, I was just a highly sensitive kid picking up on everything in the room and absorbing it and then not having a place to put it.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And so I would go home, regroup by myself, and then go back out in the world. But everything shifted dramatically when my parents joined the ministry, because then I was put on the front lines and in the spotlight to attend these very social things. And it was extremely stressful for me. And so I would take books out of the library at church about how do I understand people? Why do people get married? Why do people, I just would collect people books, read them, and then I would use those books to engage with people. The other saving grace was that I loved theater. So it was so confusing because it was like, I need all this alone time, but I love people and I want to be on stage.
Yeah.
But then leave me alone.
Well, I actually really relate to that, because I think people have this idea that because I can be on a stage or I can be in a crowd,
Right.
that I enjoy it, but I don't actually. I can do it, and it's okay. It's just not the way that, when you divide people into extrovert and introvert, that doesn't work.
It's too simple. It's not
It's
that
way
black
too.
and white.
It is not.
Yeah.
And I really feel that, where I am fine on a stage and I like it and I get energy that way, but I'm the person who wants to go backstage and then not go back out and engage. That to me is like, nope, I'm done. I want to go home.
That was enough.
I want to go home and I want to get my Paula Abdul record out. And, that's what I want to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Next to it was Mariah Carey.
Yeah.
No, it's funny that you say that, because I remember seeing you in the studio at WTCM, and for years I was like, I don't think Christal likes me. But I didn't know myself well enough to know that I wasn't as extroverted as I had been performing. And that is a change in my business too, because people are like, well, I thought you were just this personality. I didn't know you actually did work.
Right.
Well, okay. So we've had a little shift there, but understanding very much that when I'm one-on-one with people, I can work all day one-on-one.
Yeah.
And then when I do the speaking events and the workshops, those are very public, and that's great. But there comes a time where I got to retreat.
You have to retreat, and there's nothing wrong with that. So you were talking about getting those books from the library, like literally studying people and then putting it into practice. How does that sort of that foundation as a child, how does that show up in working with your clients today?
Well, I would say entrepreneurs, business owners, founders, they run themselves ragged.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? They burn the candle at both ends, and they kind of like it because it becomes a little bit of a martyrdom. Right? We get into this thing, well, this is what we have to do for the business.
Right.
No.
No boundaries.
No boundaries. So creating boundaries around rest and retreat, seeing the talent you're not using with your staff.
Oh, yeah.
There's so much talent in this town, so much talent. So what staff members can you start leaning in on their talent? What kind of breaks can you take?
Right.
And then when I work one-on-one with them around their expertise, which is what I did for 15 years in finance, what is your expertise? Let's focus on that. Because most visionaries, they think they can sit in every seat in the organization and do it well. They're so wrong. They can't. Their job is to be the visionary, to be thinking bigger, to scare everybody just a little bit, to keep them growing.
Right.
But not to sit in every seat.
Yeah. And that, I think that is, that sort of entrepreneurial spirit sometimes can be quick to burn out, though, because oftentimes, because of those visions, they're growing so quickly that they don't have time to catch up and hire the right people and do the right, and build the plan. So then they're the ones that are working, 16-hour days, and that just becomes the norm.
Yeah, people say, well, I don't think I can afford to work with you. And I'm like, how can you afford not to work with someone like me? It doesn't even have to be me. But you need to hire an executive coach, an advisor, someone outside of you to help keep you focused on what's the most important. Because another great quote from my coach is stop or be stopped.
Yeah.
If you don't stop, your body will stop. Your marriage will stop. There are serious risks outside of the business that will force you to stop.
Okay, so I'm here with Kevin Klein, who is the executive director of TVC Cherry Capital Airport. And Kevin, people love to travel, but not everybody is very good at traveling. I'm sorry to say it, but like, what are some of your travel tips from Kevin's Corner?
Number one is patience, always patience. But what is about planning? So whether you make your trip reservations through using the airport website at tvcairport.com or going to each airline's website, it's about making and putting the proper information where you're going. So you book that trip, you want to make sure in there is all the contact information you have in your reservation, your email, your cell phone, everything that you can put in. Because if there's a change in your reservation for some reason, you don't want them to call your landline at home and you're not there when you're on the road.
I mean, really good point.
So it still happens. People still have landlines. So anyway, make sure you put all the right information in your record that you have. The next thing when you come out to the airport, plan on being early.
Yeah.
Plan coming 2 hours early. We've got lots of great things to do for you. But what the reason you want to plan to come in early is if you're checking bags, the bag cutoffs for most airlines are 45 minutes prior to departure. Each airline has different policies, so check that with your airline. But being there through the line to make sure your bag is back and being screened 45 minutes before departure, you have to plan for that.
Just a few travel tips with Kevin Klein. Now, how can people find you?
They can find us at tvcairport.com.
I wanted to shift gears a little bit and talk a little about this period in your story that's described. You've described it as a slow-moving car crash. Like life was unraveling in a way that almost broke you. With your permission, can you bring us into that season a little bit?
Yeah, man, if anyone lives in Traverse City or Northern Michigan, you know how hard it is to put all the pieces together here, to live here, to work here, to try to own a home here, to build a network and a community. I'm born and raised here, and that was still hard for me because my family, again, we moved here. So I had spent years building that strong network. I had a thriving career that I loved. I had started a storytelling event that became very popular with a friend and built an incredible network. And I had also found love, which if you're single in Traverse City, you know how hard that is. Maybe, it could be a matchmaker and make some money. No, I can't. That won't work here. But I had found love. And all of that was going seemingly well, actually, during the pandemic. And I had some guilt about that. I knew people were struggling and I wasn't. For the first time, I kind of felt like everything came together. And I was so excited about that. And I was 40, right? So I'm like, oh my gosh, this was all worth the wait. And then end of the summer 2022, beginning of the summer, towards the end of it, everything unraveled. That partnership with a friend came apart in a very sad way. My partner revealed he was unfaithful and had been for a while. And then I, was going out on my own full time as a coach. That to have your foundation, your relational foundation ripped away from you is the most disorienting experience a human can have. Yeah. And I wrote in Travers Magazine about that everything fell apart. And I packed my car, found a renter for my house within 2 days of that. And I said, peace out, Traverse City. I'm out. Yeah. It's a small town. You're going to run into everyone that's connected to you or those situations frequently. Yeah. And I did not have the bandwidth for that. And I didn't know how I was going to launch a business based entirely on my ability to see people, be intuitive, have clarity when the wool was pulled over my eyes in multiple situations. So I escaped for 3 months.
Where'd you go?
I went first to Nashville and holed up in my brother's studio. He's got a studio in his property. I stayed there. Then I got an invitation to South Carolina to go to the beach. Oh, heck yes. So I did that. And then I got an invitation to San Diego. I said yes to that. And then to Albuquerque, New Mexico. And that was one of the most transformative experiences of my life because, I mean, I could cry talking about it. I should do a whole storytelling event just around how I was guided in every moment of my life. When I was on the road to Nashville, I got stuck in it was miles long traffic jam, and this woman in front of me got out of her car, came to my car, and I felt stuck in life. I felt trapped in life. I was having a full-blown panic attack.
Wow.
Because it felt too symbolic of exactly the road I was on in my personal life. And she said, where are you heading? I said, I got to get to Nashville. She goes, okay, I'm friends with all the cops. This is what's going on. Here's how you're going to get out of this.
Wow.
And she told me the exact route to take to navigate my way out of that. And from that point on the plane, in shops in La Jolla, I was in La Jolla, I was in Solana Beach and Encinitas. Like, I kept meeting people everywhere I went, and I felt completely and totally guided by something bigger than me that said, hey, Shea, I know everything is falling apart, but it's for you. This is actually for you.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then you came back.
And then I came back.
And there is this like comedy club moment.
That was the tipping point.
Yeah.
I was at the mic drop in San Diego. Now I'm going to have to look up the comedian. I follow her on all the socials. She's awesome. She was in this tiny little club called the Mic Drop, and she started telling you all these jokes. And I realized, oh, I just have to take every tragedy and turn it into a punchline. And that's comedy.
Yeah.
And so I started writing jokes about my ex in that moment. They were rattling off. I had them all, and it felt so cathartic and empowering and good. And it was a way for me to own my story without outing anybody completely.
Right.
So I got really pumped up. I'm like, I can do stand up. Maybe my next thing is that I should do stand up. And I went home that night, and I was in the bathtub, and I have done improv comedy since 2019 with Full Tilt Comedy. And I'm in the bathtub, my phone pings, and I look at it, and it's Lisa the vet, and she says, hey, Shea, if you decide to come back to Traverse City, would you do stand-up at the Christmas show?
No way.
And I was like, the Lord has spoken.
Wow.
That was the moment.
Wow.
And I said, well, I guess I'm going home.
And that was it.
And that was it.
And comedy brought you back.
Comedy brought me back, baby.
In so many ways.
Yes.
In more ways than one.
Yes.
What do you think it was about laughter? What is it about laughter? You mentioned, the cathartic nature of it, but I've always been one of those people too that, like, you've got a lot of tragic moments or whatever in your life, and you're just like, all right, I have to find the punchline so I don't become the punchline. It feels like that,
Exactly. You know what? Okay, you're answering your own question. I don't even need to say it.
Yeah, what
find
did
the
it do
punchline so you don't become the punchline.
Right.
Yeah, well, I knew there were stories circulating about me that weren't true.
Right.
They weren't accurate. And I'm not one to confront things that way. What's the point? But I knew that if I could make a joke about it and have some fun with it, that also, it just feels so, I've always been funny. I've always had this dry, kind of dark sense of humor. And that was like, wait, I get to do that? And people like it?
Yeah.
They want me to be up there telling these jokes. And so the comedy, you would think the comedy community, because some comedians are kind of dark and harsh, you'd think maybe they'd be like curmudgeons or grumpy old men. Like I am on the inside. No, but they aren't. They were like a very welcoming, friendly community.
Right.
And they all just encouraged me. And I was terrified. I went in, and right away, the first person I met was Dean Edwards. And he was on, I didn't even know who he was. I just walked in. I was like, hey, what's up? At the Hotel Indigo. And I made a joke about, if you want to get into anything you're not supposed to be in, bring the ice bags.
Right.
always bring an ice bag.
And they let you in.
They're like, oh, I got the ice bags. He was cracking up because I've never thought of that. So anyways, Dean now and I are friends and just made friends with these comedians, and they kept helping me, and they still help me write my jokes. So
I think that comedians in general, you're attracted to these very special breeds, entrepreneurs that are a little bit crazy and rebellious and risk takers, and comedians that are they're offering up this vulnerability in a way that is accessible to other people, and they can talk about these really dark moments in a way that keeps people listening instead of turning away. I think there's something really special about that.
They're inviting you into like some pretty ugly stuff in their life.
Oh, yeah.
And you may not even be aware of that. That's what's happening. That's what's happening.
Yeah. So you talk about these holy shift moments. And that's when life makes it impossible to go back to who you were. You had several of those holy shift moments during that time away. What do you think that people misunderstand about that kind of reinvention?
Oh, so I couldn't call it the holy shit.
You couldn't.
Hard to brand that.
Right.
People don't like cussing, even though we all do it. It's hard to make that public. So I'm like, well, let's call it the holy shift.
Let's just add an F.
We're going to just add an F, which there were a lot of Fs.
Actually makes it better.
It actually makes it better. There were a lot of Fs through the years.
Yes, I bet.
So I think that very little moment, how do I say this? Very few times in life are we actually jumping off a cliff, running over hot coals, jumping off the bridge with our friends. It's tiny little shifts that all add up.
Right.
And so in my coaching work, I'm helping shift your mindset, shift perspective, shifting these things that right now, as we're going down the road, may feel like just a 5-degree difference or 7 or 8. But we all know that the farther you go down the road, you've gone 180 degrees in a different direction. Right. I'm not here to re-traumatize people with change.
Right.
Okay? I've been there. It sucks. This is more of a direct, my approach is very direct, but mindful way to create change in your life and business.
What do you think it is specifically about business owners, entrepreneurs, high achievers, that keeps them clinging to something they know isn't working?
They know isn't working.
But you're holding on to it.
Because we attach our businesses and our ideas to our identity. And that's a scary place to be. For a while, yes, I get that. But there comes a point where what you've created outgrows you. And you've got to know when to step aside.
Yeah.
And so...
And that you are an individual.
You're a person.
Happens to be doing this thing.
And they forget that they're multi-potentials. I believe whether you're an entrepreneur or not, you're very creative, you're resourceful, and you're whole. Those are the 3 tenets of coaching. I don't work with anyone if I don't believe they're creative, resourceful, and whole people.
Right.
So we get attached. We get this, we have an idea, it works, and then people get attached to that one idea and forget that they have multiple ideas in them that will still work.
It's a really good point. You mentioned how direct you are. And I love that about you, because I love that it's not like your work is fluffy.
No.
Does that make sense?
I'm fun, but we don't do fluffy
I think sometimes when we think about coaching, you think about this fluffy stuff. And it's not. You are strategic. You think about and talk about culture and behavior and real decision making. And when someone says, I need clarity, what is it that you usually find underneath that?
They already know.
Yeah.
We all know. But we get lost. Everybody does. We all get lost in the overwhelm. I mean, look at what's packed into a day.
Yeah.
If someone had told you as a teenager, this is what being an adult is like, you'd be like, I'm good.
I don't want to be.
I'm good. I'm going to stay at my parents'.
I just don't want to be a teenager.
Yeah. I also don't want to be a teenager again, to be clear.
Keep me at like age 9. I'm good.
Age 9. Okay. All right. That's good. That's good. See? So age 9. You're like, yeah, I don't need that adulthood thing.
Right.
So it's easy to get lost in all of that. And I empathize with any business owner, especially when you got families and kids and every dynamic under the sun. to have a coach, an executive coach, an advisor, call us whatever you want.
Right.
On your team and on your side to be a confidant. I mean, your spouse 100% doesn't want to hear about it anymore.
Yeah, I think I'm not saying that for anything personal.
Sure. What do you want to confess here, Christal?
No, I think that that the people, your friends, your partners, everybody in your life, they want to help you, but at some point you need someone who's going to be independent and who's going to be indifferent at that point, right?
Yeah, you can fire me. Yes. You don't like what I have to say, we can part ways, and that's okay. That's fine. Your friends, they are going to tread very carefully on what they tell you because they have something to lose.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to lose.
I want to talk a little bit about intuition versus anxiety. And you're known for helping people blend strategy with intuition. And I think a lot of people maybe have the wrong idea about intuition. How do you
It's just a bunch of woo-woo, Christal.
I mean, we've all had moments like that, though, where you're like, I don't know how I knew, but I knew.
Yeah.
And there is also these moments where it's anxiety pretending to be intuition.
Totally.
Right? So how do you tell the difference between when it is intuition and when it's anxiety pretending?
Well, as someone who is, I think a lot of people struggle with anxiety. I have in the past tremendously. Anxiety is false evidence appearing real. Fear.
Yeah.
False evidence appearing real. So it feels real in your body.
Yeah.
Okay. But when I've had intuitive hits, that's what we call in coaching, intuitive hits. Men will say instinct. Women are comfortable with intuitive. Men will say instinct. So it's that knowing. Knowing comes from experience and collective wisdom that you have. We are always attributing it to something outside of us.
Okay.
So I need the answer from some spiritual realm, from a guru, or then it will be legitimate. No, it comes from your own level of experience, wisdom, and knowledge that you have along the way.
Yeah. That
then is confirmed by other things. So what I do with clients is I want to look at evidence because now we have to go fact find.
Right.
Because if I see anxiety happening in someone, that's just false evidence. I want to go look for the real evidence.
Okay.
That you know what you're doing. You've made good decisions before. So what direction do you want to head? There's a lot at stake for business owners. A lot.
I really love that you point out that women call it intuition, men call it instinct. It's the same thing that I've noticed from, like, if you're talking about breathing techniques, women will call it yoga breathing. Men will call it battle breathing.
Oh,
but it's the same kind of breathing.
Yes. Either way, we're all doing breath work.
We're all just doing breath work.
Because we're still upright.
We're just
still
breathing.
upright.
Yes, exactly. Let's talk about the storytelling piece into this. So you've said that storytelling is a missing link, and that if we have a platform, we actually owe it to people to stay interesting, which I kind of love that because I'm battling every day to try to stay interesting. All I really want to do is go home and cuddle with my dogs and watch TV.
Yes.
9 hours of Golden Girls. That's fine.
That's fair.
But what do you actually mean by that?
Okay. So this is going to feel like opposite advice. People don't care about your story.
No.
They actually don't really care. What people care about is they're looking for themselves in your story.
Yes.
They're looking to identify with your story. And when I say you owe it to other people to be interesting, that's part of that work, is being interested in other people. So when I give my keynote is about how do you be the most interested person in the room?
Not interesting.
Correct.
Very interesting.
So yes, interesting. We have an inception of interesting happening right here. No, I'd like to teach people, how can you go be curious about other people, ask deeper questions. How do you actually listen? Because not only are you letting them be seen, you're going to find yourselves in their story. And then that creates an incredible networking opportunity. Yeah. People always say to me, Shea, how did you find that out? Why did they tell you that? I just asked.
Yeah. That curiosity piece is so important. And I've actually been accused of this multiple times. People accuse me of interviewing them because I have a journalistic
You and I can't
presence.
help it.
We can't. And I'm not the kind of person that I don't want to talk about surfacey stuff. I'm going to meet you and I'll be like, tell me about your childhood very, very quickly. because that is where I live a little bit deeper. That can be off-putting to some people, I think. Really, if you're at a party and it's like, oh, tell me about your childhood trauma. That's not something people want to do, but it is, I feel like, engaging someone below the surface.
Right. So this is part of my workshop teachings, is that what do people like to do on the water? We like to play on the water.
Yeah.
We like to kayak. We like to ski. We like to swim. All that happens on the surface.
Yeah.
Play happens on the surface. Okay. That's the shallow end. That's where we have to all kind of like learn how to do that and look at conversation as play. Just because we're having fun talking about your earrings or your cute nails,
thank you,
doesn't mean that it doesn't have value or that it's too shallow. That's where we learn to play in conversation. Then when we earn our trust and respect with people in that arena, then we can go a little bit deeper.
Yeah, but you have to earn it. It's consent.
You have to earn it. You have to get consent because then you can go into the deeper conversations with folks. So,
and I'm just pushing people right into that water, aren't I?
You're like taking their head and shoving it. No, I'm just kidding.
Tell me
about your mother. I need to know about your mama trauma. No. I do. But it can be hard for people who connect quickly to be patient with the play.
It's very true.
Yeah.
What's one storytelling shift that leaders can make right away then? Is it about that play?
Okay, so we're kind of talking about two different things.
Okay.
Sorry, I can go into deep dives on both these things. But if leaders are using storytelling, so Dana Black and I are doing these fabulous workshops together, which we got to both get in here to talk about this.
Yes.
Storytelling is what connects.
Okay.
So we did Honor Bank. They did a day away with their staff.
Okay.
We asked 3 people to tell their stories. Norm told his story in front of the entire team. And I asked specifically, will you tell a story about when you failed? So he told a story in front of the staff. He said, I've never really told this out loud, but I'm going to share it with you. What a cool moment for him to practice vulnerability, for them to understand that he's a human doing his best job to run a bank.
Yeah.
And that moment created a ground for them to share. And so storytelling is great for leaders. I always say leaders go first. So if you can share a story that helps connect, that's one way to do that.
That's the relatability.
That's the relatability.
People are looking for themselves in your story.
Yes, they're always looking for themselves in your story. Yeah. And to be a good storyteller, you have to be interesting.
Yeah.
So I will coach people. That's a tangent. That's a tool I have in coaching that I work with people to help them tell an interesting story.
Right.
It has to be interesting.
Tell me about the honest edge.
Yes.
That we become an authority on our pain when we face it. You have been very open about that yourself. So tell me a little bit more about that.
I had a lot of shame around my pain. I had a lot of shame around, at the surface level, people are like, oh, Shea's fun. She's got nice hair. She's sociable, and I think the perception was that there wasn't a lot of runway in my life that had any depth. And that's because I didn't talk about that. And we're told not to talk about that. My coach said to me in a very clear way, Shea, I don't trust people who don't suffer.
Yeah.
And that was the permission slip I needed to be able to talk about my own pain.
Yeah.
And to be vulnerable on my side of things. I've had some health struggles that came on really early in life that I have to manage still all the time. I've been single and done everything by myself for the most part and had to build my own network and resources. I have a religious background I've had to unpack. And that has been intense work. There's multiple things I could talk about, but the Honest Edge podcast started in 2020 because we were all home. I didn't know what to do. I was by myself, kind of bored out of my mind. And I have all this radio experience, why don't I just start a podcast? So I did that. And the name came from a girl, Teresa, who worked with me. And she said, Shea, you're so good because you take people right to that honest edge.
That's a great.
And I was like, oh,
Great line.
There it is. I'm going to call it the honest edge. So I called it the honest edge, and that's what I do. I let people talk about their pain and suffering and how they've turned it into strategy, basically. Yeah. I don't say it that abruptly, but it is. How did you take your pain and become an authority on it so you can help other people? And so that's my podcast. I only have 10 episodes.
Yeah.
So you are absolutely slaying and killing the podcast life. I only have 10.
That's okay.
I do this when I find the right people, because I'm not going to put people on the podcast who are in the middle of their pain.
Yes, that's hard to do.
I'm not going to do that because they're not through it. It could be traumatizing for them. I want people on the other side who can then offer morsels of wisdom for people who are like, am I ever going to get over this?
Well, it's one of the tenets of your coaching. They have to be whole.
They have to be whole. There has to be a wholeness to that part of their story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if people want to listen to those podcasts, though,
Yes.
or if they're interested in, your executive coaching, how do people find you?
Well, just go to SheaPetaja.com, and it's a super easy name to spell.
Yes, it's SheaPetaja.
Finish, yes.
.com, which is a beautiful name, by the way.
Well, thank you.
You should very much. Gorgeous name, and you'll figure out how to spell it. Or they can just go meet you at a billboard.
I'm on billboards. I'm basically everywhere. And I really do want to find like-hearted business owners right now. I'm looking for founders and business owners who are stable. Mm-hmm. They have traction, but they're also looking for hidden revenue in the business. They're trying to figure out their talent. Mm-hmm. They want to optimize that. I use the predictive index as one of my tools.
Nice.
So, what are you looking at this year? How do you, despite all the terrible news that's out there, this is your opportunity.
Yeah.
This is what they're good at. So
that's great.
I'll come alongside them.
So SheaPetaja.com. And please listen to the Honest Edge podcast. Yes, there are only 10 episodes, but they're all incredible episodes. And I love that you take your time with it. It's not about quantity. It's about making sure people are ready, which is what you help people do with your coaching.
Yeah, it's not a funnel. It's literally a conversation about the deeper stuff we typically only talk about in private.
Oh, I love that. I love it. Well, Shea Petaja, thank you so much for being here. This has been Currently the Conversation, brought to you by TVC Cherry Capital Airport. It is your Northern Michigan connection. And to everyone listening, if this episode gave you something, send it to a friend who's been carrying too much. And I'll see you next time.